There's a developer who has games available on Steam, the Atari VCS, and soon, one of the major 3 platforms in the video game industry. This company makes unique titles, simple to pick up and easy to understand, but they're also deeper than the sum of their parts. A 3-dimensional on-rail space shooting game has been done for years, appearing on home consoles starting in 1993 with Star Fox. And what could be simpler than a 3D maze game? The genius lies in the simplicity, and what these developers can do with it, at least if you ask me. And today, I want to introduce you all to a team that you will probably be seeing more of, or at least more of their games, especially if you're an Atari VCS fan. So without further delay, let's meet JD Video Game Productions and their indie releases of Super Space Shooter 16 and Super 3D Maze 16. These titles are crazy.
Hey, my name is Jameel. I'm with JD Video Game Productions. I guess I'm the president or owner of the company. We've done Superstar Shooter 16 and Super 3D Maze 16. Both games have been released on the Atari VCS. We've also done Steam releases on both. Did an Xbox, like Microsoft Store release for Super Star Shooter 16. I did an iArcade unofficial release with Uncle Flip. I've been doing game development for around 5 years, and yeah, loving it.
Hey, I am Tony Longworth. I am a music composer. If I put music composer, I should put dark alternative music composer because it sounds more moody. I'm based in the UK. I work with Jameel. I work with Indy. Worked on the video games. Wrote all the music for Super 3D Maze 16 and created the sound effects. Did all the voiceover. So if you play that game, it's basically me talking to you, which is a bit freaky because when I was testing the game or when I play the game, it's me talking to me, so that's kind of like really freaky and pushes me over the edge.
Super 3D Maze 16. Better than being this guy.
Hey! Hi, I'm Indy. I'm the writer of Super 3D Maze 16 and Superstar Shooter 16 so far. Hopefully more games in the future. I'm a horror writer primarily. I've done a few horror books, a bunch of horror short stories that can be found on Amazon. I write the stuff, I write the words.
Superstar Shooter 16 was the first JD Video Game Productions offering, and it's a game that feels very Atari to me. If you enjoy the presentation of Tempest 2000, but prefer on-rail arcade shooters to web shooters, well, then I have great news for you, because that is Superstar Shooter 16 in a nutshell. The screen is often busy with a ton going on. Power-ups of all kinds of descriptions flying at you at rapid speeds, enemies and obstacles coming from all directions, and a point of view that often adds to the challenge. If I'm honest, the game can be a bit hard to grasp, especially when it comes to where you are versus the obstacles and enemies that are approaching you. But this doesn't make the game feel cheap or unfair. It's just something you have to learn. You pilot an odd little ship with the ability to speed up and slow down, along with shooting a steady stream of bullets against your enemies. The movement feels good, and the ship is small enough to maneuver out of tight situations. But the game is hard, and only the strongest of players will see their way to the end of Superstar Shooter. It's the audio design that stands out to me the most in this game. Again, the game calls back to Tempest 2000 on the Jaguar, as you have all kinds of voices, shooting sounds, and upbeat high-tempo music. I could see the presentation causing something of a sensory overload for some players, but for everybody else, it's a good video game atmosphere.
Superstar Shooter 16. It's primarily, I guess there's a couple big influences. One of them is Star Fox. That was a big one for me because like I remember just having my mind blown by both of those games when I was a kid. I was keeping the VCS's performance profile in mind with all of that, so it's very low poly art style, that type of thing. Like I grew up in the country, kind of middle of nowhere. We had dial-up internet. Like I had friends and stuff like that, but it'd be like, oh, your mom has to drive you 15 kilometers to go see a friend, which is probably like 8 miles or something, right? So like it's a big deal to go and see people. I spent a lot of time by myself or with my brothers. And the first computer we actually had was a 286. And that thing, I had that till I was like 12, I think. So I was stuck on that thing playing around with these big 5 1/4-inch floppy disks, loading up games. I had an NES and a Super NES. It's not like I was hard done by, but like having even more games that were on the computer was like it was a big thing for me when I discovered that like I could play games on my dad's big old clunky computer. And those games had a very distinct art style on the 286 because it was EGA graphics, 16 colors. So I tried to resurrect that 16 color thing a little bit. The games ended up looking kind of or Superstar Shooter 16 anyways, they looked kind of Jaguar-esque. But when I found out I was going to be on the VCS, I got some additional tech that I put into Unity, and that allowed us to do sort of like a vector line style of graphics. So in the harder levels, you start seeing the enemies change a little bit. They become more like line art type of thing. Like they would talk a lot about procedural generation. So as a programmer, this was like one of these like big like, oh, I'm big brain, I'm gonna do procedural generation instead of proper level design. So that was a thing I did with Superstar Shooter 16. I came up with my own algorithms to do that. It was kind of fun because I started my studio back in the pandemic, and it was like I just needed challenges and intellectual stimulation and like just stuff to do because I couldn't see anybody.
Superstar Shooter 16 was a fantastic first offering, and it's one that I really enjoyed. This game shows that JD Video Games has style for days, and the ability to make really intense, action-packed games that require top-notch hand-eye coordination. I have no issues in giving it a score of 3 classic controllers out of 5. It has flaws, but they can easily be overlooked for some awesome and intense arcade shooting action. Lovers of Tempest and Star Fox will no doubt have a blast with this one, but let's move on to their second offering, Super 3D Maze 16.
Now that he was genuinely beginning to remember things about his life, he'd become addicted. His mind screamed at him to obtain another fix.
I did play Maze Craze for a little bit of inspiration. I keep bringing up Bastion. That's actually, so Bastion's by Supergiant Games. It's one of the bigger indie games from like 10 years ago. And that one did the narration over top of gameplay really beautifully. It wasn't a maze game. It was more like an action RPG. So that was a big inspiration for Maze, for Super 3D Maze 16. I did play a maze game on my 286 back in the day. I think there was one maze one, and there was also like a 3D Pac-Man that was like really basic, but you know, I've seen some of this stuff as I was growing up. I always say with Super 3D Maze, I tried to like scope things really small so that I'll actually finish it. I'll actually have something to release. And like this was gonna be like an easy, like you do a maze and we're gonna sell this thing, and the scope just grew and grew and grew from there.
There are a few games that can say they are truly greater than the sum of their parts. And, well, this is one of them if I ever saw one. Just describing the game to you will probably give you doubts on whether or not it's worth playing. A 3D maze game with various perspectives, both overhead and first person, where you solve puzzles, avoid obstacles, and learn a deep and intriguing story that pulls you in more the longer you play. If any one piece of this game was removed, it would be a much worse title for it. But the combination of all these elements, and more, make it a game that is not as inviting as Superstar Shooter 16 was, but infinitely deeper and much more rewarding to play and experience. It's a game that sucks you in. There is little I could tell you about the gameplay to convince you of my previous statement. Parts of it is simply traversing mazes. Some of it is a simple Simon-style memorization game. But trust me when I say that it all works, especially when layered with the melodic music and soothing narration, both performed by Tony Longworth.
So I got to play sort of Jameel's first game, which was awesome, and I wanted to work with him. I said, oh yeah, I'm well up for working with you on whatever you do next, which was Super 3D Maze 16. So I was just expecting Jameel to say, yeah, just write some music, but instead he said, can you write a piece of music for every single level? Can you do all the voiceover? Can you do the sound effects? So it was like, oh, okay, yeah, this is cool. But it was great. It was really good style. So I got to play the game, and then I just let loose, really, and just started experimenting. I was inspired by the game, by just the visuals. So a lot of the soundtrack, it's very electronic. It's not all electronic, but some of it is. I mean, one of the tracks is Atari ST sound chip. It was created. The full track was created using the ST sound chip. Ran through a whole load of effects and stuff like that. So it was I want to just keep that Atari sort of vibe going on this. So there's mystery in the game. There's a bleakness, and why are we here and stuff. And I was trying to just bring all that to the music, really. And then Jameel just sort of, he kind of shaped it. And then when Indy got on board and started writing it, it became easier again, because it was like, I've got something else to inspire me. I can read these like really cool stories. I don't know where they're going, but I'm going to read those. Oh, cool, this is cool.
The story is one that is fed to you by little bits and pieces. It starts slow and eases you into the ideas of the game world and why on Earth, or I guess why on space, this man Elias is stuck in this psychedelic, fantastical situation. Things open up a ton when you get towards the end of the currently available 12 levels, and I couldn't help but to really be infatuated by the story and intrigued by the memories returning to our so-called hero. It turned out that Tony introduced Jameel and the rest of the crew to a sci-fi body horror author who goes under the moniker of Indy. He did a great job exploring the game's themes and creating an intriguing reason for things to be as they are in Super 3D Maze 16.
Initially, there was I had a character name, and I kind of had the loose general kind of idea of the game, and I had some kind of like starter like test writing to work off of. Even from there, I was given kind of like, if I like it, I can build off of it or tweak it or whatever, or I can scrap it all and completely do something new. The way I like to work, I don't really like to throw stuff out if it doesn't need to be thrown out. I'd rather take it and mutate it and use it as inspiration, like go off on my own little journey. But we talked about it and kind of like talked about the type of game 3D Maze was, because that was the first one. Jameel talked about, like, we were talking about it. I was like, okay, so it's a little like Bennett Foddy, like it's a little kind of maybe almost philosophical kind of mind journey type narration. And I think that was kind of right, but with a retro sci-fi kind of vibe to it. I'm like, perfect, I love that. And then I kind of just went off. And 3D Maze was interesting because it did have that kind of Mindscape vibe to it. So it's not like there is the character of Elias, but you don't really like learn anything about him, and he's mostly just meant to be like a proxy for the player and everything like that. So there's a little bit of mystery there. And then he's in this strange world of 3D mazes, and there's UFOs up in the sky and everything like that. So learning about like the gameplay elements, and I think, I played through the game, or at least I played through part of it before I wrote it, just to get a vibe of what the game was, what it looked like. And then just kind of went off and put together like a strange kind of stream of consciousness, bit of narration and everything like that. And Jameel liked it. It's like I came in super late on 3D Maze. Like it was pretty much entirely finished. So, and I don't want to like start writing something and it's a completely different game. And then suddenly the game isn't finished and you got to add in all this new stuff. So I basically just took what was there and incorporated that and worked within that. I think it was after I did the writing that the idea of adding in the little cutscene flash visuals, that definitely came in after I started writing.
Again, which one of us is the one who accidentally deleted that bank manager's entire language center when all she was supposed to do was get the code to the safe? Jesse, that was you. Oh, right, that was me. He was so adorable though.
Ultimately, it would be near impossible to convince you of how rewarding and fun it was to explore the mazes of this game. Seeing the high score table at the end of each level was thrilling, and sometimes sobering. Because when you thought you traversed a level in a really fluid manner, you find out that somebody else did it a whole lot faster. Watching the amoeba-like beings and eyeballs float around in the backgrounds, avoiding the UFOs and spark-like enemies in the first person, finding erasers, keys, and teleporters, All of it was just rewarding, and more importantly, fun to do. The game is like a fever dream visually, and I personally love it. One amazing effect is the ability to see the other parts of the mazes below you and next to you as you traverse the one that you're in. The floor is almost completely see-through, and gives a terrifying but beautiful effect to the game.
With no way of knowing what might lie around the next corner, it's best you keep your focus on taking the next step.
But Super 3D Maze 16 is an experience very much worth having, and it's worth the price of admission to explore this lonely, terrifying world of mazes, unidentified flying objects, and just scary atmosphere that Jameel, Tony, Indy, and the crew have developed. I have no hesitation in giving Super 3D Maze 16 a score of 4 classic controllers out of 5. The only thing holding it back from a 5 out of 5 is that, well, it's just going to be too far out there for some people. I'm sure a few won't quote-unquote get it, and that's fine. But for everybody else, I cannot recommend this game enough.
He committed to memory for no reason other than to move forward. But should he have ever taken that first step?
So with 2 great games under their belt and what seems to be endless talent and vision at their disposal, you might be wondering a few things about JD Video Games. And there are 2 things that I specifically wanted them to have the opportunity to tell the world. Number 1, why develop on the VCS? And number 2, what is next for them and this brilliant series of diverse games?
What specifically, and I guess Jameel, maybe you'll be the best one to answer this, what attracted you to the VCS?
I was watching the project from the start. I'm not a backer. I didn't buy one initially. I watched that one as well as the Amico, and just to see, how these new players are trying to sort of shake up the console market. It was really interesting to watch, and everyone will, of course, remember back in the day, everyone was saying it's all fake. None of this is ever going to happen. It's a Kickstarter scam, all of that. And the VCS actually came to be, which is super cool. If you look at platforms like Steam, there are hundreds of games released every day on Steam. So for a guy like me to even make any kind of inroads, to get anyone to even just play my game is quite difficult. So because the Atari VCS is a smaller community, it's more niche, there's fewer games released. Like I know everyone talks about, with David, he's trying to do sort of weekly releases type of thing, right? That's wonderful for us as indie devs, because it means everyone will talk about us. Everyone knows that something's happening, that your game's out, and you get to be the flavor of the week, so to say. And people will try your game, people will play it, you will get feedback. And the one last final point I want to make is the classic controller. I didn't grow up with that. I wasn't a 2600 player. I did have like a big joystick that my dad had on his old 286 that I would play around with. Very different from the Atari classic controller or the 2600 controller. But as obviously that piece of hardware fascinated me a lot. And that was another pull to the system, because it becomes this like technical challenge, this technical constraint, right? How do I make a game that can only have 2 buttons, 1 control, and you got a spinner to work with? And like figure out what to do with that. And for Superstar Shooter 16, like I racked my brain. I eventually came up with a solution there. And I had that in mind from day one because I wanted to be on the VCS. And eventually I got to do it.
What's next? Can you give us any hints as to what's coming up from JD? Yeah. Will it continue on the VCS?
2025 has been a bit of a slow year. Like we've done some stuff. Obviously, the Super 3D Maze 16 expansion came out. I've been working with a major hardware platform. Can't say which one. I'm under NDA, blah, blah, blah. All that.
Oh, wow.
But yeah, so I'm working on porting both of the games to that. It's been quite a process. But in the process of doing that at the same time, obviously we're doing expansions. So when those releases happen, they're getting the full 12 levels for Super 3D Maze, which also came to VCS. And I'm doing an expansion. I should say we're doing an expansion. Indy's heavily involved in that. Tony will be in the near future as well. So we're doing a big expansion on Superstar Shooter 16. Awesome. That is for sure going to come to Atari VCS, because I know there's people in the community that just love that game. They're going to want to play it. It's going to be a pretty big change. And I'm thinking it's September now. That's 4 or 5 months away. We'll be releasing that on VCS. And after that, the game that we have planned is called Super Cyber Borders 16. There's some hints to it in Super 3D Maze 16. If you play the expansions, there's things where like there's a severed head flying down a slope on a snowboard. It's like, well, what's going on there? So if you're like dying to put the pieces together, the next game is going to be a little bit about that. You're not going to play as a severed head or anything like that, but that is going to be a character in that game. So it'll be a snowboarding game. It'll be in the style. I'm still determining what to do. I've had to like scope it down quite a bit. It's either going to be similar to Ski Free, with quite a bit more than that. Like that was a very simple game, but it was iconic in my view. It's either going to be like that, or it's going to be sort of a first person flying down the hill, sort of similar to Superstar Shooter 16, except you're going to be a snowboarder with a machine gun that shoots lasers. I don't know what you call a laser machine gun, but it'd be something like that.
I'd like to thank Indy, Jameel, and Tony for taking the time to sit down with me and tell me about the company and this series of games. They couldn't have been nicer people, and I want to have them on the podcast very soon. But until then, why not leave a like and subscribe? We cover all things Atari, and often sit down and speak with developers and personalities surrounding Atari and their games. And if you guys want to see a full uncut interview, let me know. If there is enough of a demand, I'll absolutely release the whole thing. Let me know about your thoughts and opinions on the Super 16 series as well. Let me know which game is your favorite, and let me know if you plan on picking them up after seeing this video. I'd love to read all about that and anything else you have to say in the comments down below. And with all that, it's time to wrap up the video. I've been the 7800 Pro Gamer, a man who is lost in space, with no memory of how I would end up in the endless maze known as the Atari Network. But I still want to thank you all for watching. And as always, remember to stay classy, Atarians.